Imagine sacrificing everything for one person, only to wonder if they would ever know how much you gave up. David never imagined becoming a single father 20 years ago. He stood in a silent hospital hallway, holding his newborn daughter in trembling arms. Just hours earlier, he had lost the love of his life during childbirth. In a single day, he had become both a grieving husband and the only parent his little girl would ever know. Friends and relatives tried to help, but many quietly doubted him. "You're still young," they said. "Find someone else. Let your parents raise the baby." David refused every suggestion. He looked down at the tiny child sleeping peacefully in his arms and whispered, "I don't know how, but I promise you'll never feel alone." He named her Emma. Those first few years were the hardest days of his life. During the day, David worked long shifts as a mechanic. At night, he fed Emma, changed diapers, cleaned the apartment, and stayed awake whenever she cried. Most nights he slept less than 3 hours. Money was always short. Sometimes he skipped dinner so Emma could have fresh fruit and milk. He wore the same old jacket for nearly 10 winters because every extra dollar went toward her clothes. Books and school supplies. No one knew. Every morning he smiled as if everything was fine. When Emma was 5 years old, she asked the question David had feared for years. "Daddy, where's Mommy?" David froze. His heart broke all over again. He knelt beside her and gently replied, "Your mommy loved you more than anything in this world. She gave you the greatest gift she could, her love, and every single day, she's watching over us." Emma hugged him tightly. "I'll take care of you too, Daddy." David smiled. But once she fell asleep that night, he cried alone in the kitchen. Years passed. Emma grew into a bright, kind, and hard-working student. Her teachers admired her intelligence. Her classmates loved her kindness. Everyone praised Emma. Few people noticed the tired father who quietly stood in the background at every school event. Whenever Emma won an award, David clapped louder than anyone else. Whenever she failed, he reminded her that one mistake could never define her future. As Emma entered high school, life became more complicated. Teenagers often compared parents. Some classmates arrived in expensive cars. Others wore designer clothes and took luxury vacations. Emma sometimes felt embarrassed that her father still drove an old pickup truck held together by years old repairs. One afternoon, she hesitated before asking him to park a block away from school. David noticed. He simply smiled and said, "Of course." He never mentioned how deeply it hurt. That evening, he sat alone in the garage, pretending to repair an engine while silently wiping tears from his eyes. He understood. Teenagers often worried about fitting in. Still, the silence felt heavier than any toolbox he had ever lifted. Months later, Emma received an acceptance letter from one of the country's best universities. It was the happiest day of her life. She ran into the house screaming with excitement. "Dad, I got in." David hugged her so tightly she could barely breathe. "I'm so proud of you." But that same night, after Emma went to bed, David quietly opened the university website. His smile slowly disappeared. The tuition was far beyond anything he had saved. He checked his bank account. It wasn't even close. The next morning, David made a decision without telling anyone. He accepted a second job unloading delivery trucks before sunrise. He continued working at the repair shop during the day. Most nights he returned home exhausted, barely able to stand. Emma noticed the dark circles under his eyes. "Dad, are you okay?" David smiled. "I'm just getting older." She believed him. What she didn't know, was that every dollar he earned had only one purpose: to give her the future he never had. And then, just a few weeks before Emma's graduation, David collapsed at work. The ambulance arrived within minutes. Emma's phone rang during class. The voice on the other end said something she never expected to hear. "Daughter, you need to come to the hospital immediately." Everything changed in that single moment. Emma's hands trembled as she rushed through the hospital doors. She found her father lying quietly in a hospital bed, connected to several monitors, for the first time in her life. David looked fragile. The doctor stepped into the hallway. Your father collapsed from extreme exhaustion. He's been working far beyond what his body could handle. He's stable for now, but he needs complete rest. Emma frowned. What do you mean working too much? He only has one job. The doctor looked surprised. One job, according to his medical records. He's been working to full-time jobs for almost 4 years. Emma felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. To jobs for 4 years. Why hadn't he told her? That evening, while David slept. A nurse handed Emma a worn leather wallet and a small envelope that had fallen from his jacket. Inside the envelope were neatly folded receipts, overdue bills, and a handwritten notebook. Emma slowly opened it. Every page listed dates, expenses, and savings. Emma's school books, Emma's science project, Emma's graduation dress, university savings. Then she reached the final page. Written in her father's familiar handwriting were words she would never forget. If I can pay for her education before my body gives up, then every sacrifice was worth it. Tears rolled down Emma's face. She remembered every moment she had complained. Every time she had asked him to park away from school, every birthday when he insisted he didn't. One day present. Every Christmas when he bought her gifts but never anything for himself. She had thought they were simply poor. She never realized her father had chosen to live that way. The next morning David slowly opened his eyes. Emma was sitting beside him. I'm sorry, she whispered. David looked confused. For what? For never seeing everything you did for me. He smiled weakly. You never had to. My job wasn't to make you feel guilty. My job was to make sure you had a better life. Emma couldn't hold back her tears. She hugged him tighter than she ever had before. Weeks later, David was finally allowed to return home, but only under one condition. No more heavy work. His second job was over. The problem was obvious. Without that income, Emma couldn't afford university. David quietly accepted it. It's okay, he told her. You can always go next year. Emma simply nodded, but she had already made a decision. Graduation day arrived. The auditorium was filled with proud families when Emma's name was announced as valedictorian. The audience erupted in applause. She walked confidently onto the stage. The principal smiled. You may now give your graduation speech. Emma stood silently for a few moments. Then she looked directly at her father in the front row. This speech isn't about me. The room became quiet. For 20 years, one man gave up every dream he ever had so I could chase mine. David lowered his head. He worked while I slept. He skipped meals so I could eat. He wore the same clothes for years so I could have new ones, and somehow, he convinced me everything was normal. Many parents in the audience wiped away tears. Emma reached into her pocket. She held up a folded piece of paper. This is not my university acceptance letter. It's my scholarship award. The audience looked confused. I received a full academic scholarship months ago. David's eyes widened. Emma smiled through tears. I never told my dad, because I wanted to surprise him today. The auditorium fell completely silent. My education is fully paid for. David covered his mouth. Emma continued. And that's not the only surprise. She invited him onto the stage. The audience stood and applauded as David slowly walked toward his daughter. Emma handed him another envelope. Inside was a property deed. I used my scholarship bonus, my internship income, donations from my teachers, and help from people who heard your story. We bought you a small auto repair shop. David stared at the papers in disbelief. No more working for someone else, no more double shifts, no more choosing between food and bills. It's your turn to live your dream. The audience rose to its feet. Many were openly crying. David wrapped his arms around his daughter. I only wanted you to have a better life. Emma smiled. You already gave me the greatest life I could ever ask for. You taught me kindness. You taught me courage. And today, I finally get to give something back. Months later, David opened the repair shop. Above the entrance hung a simple wooden sign. David and Emma Auto Repair every afternoon after university classes. Emma stopped by to help with paperwork before heading home. Customers often asked why the shop always seemed so cheerful. David would simply smile and point toward his daughter, because this place wasn't built with money, it was built with love. Some people spend their lives searching for success, others spend their lives creating it for someone else. David never became rich, he never became famous, but 20 years after raising his daughter alone, he discovered he had already become the richest man in the room. Because the little girl he had sacrificed everything for never forgot the man who gave her everything. The end.